Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Tammy Bruce calls out this know-nothing, muckraking CNN reporter on her own show for not only asking these terrible questions, but for trying to reveal Marco Rubio's plan for peace in Ukraine. Let's dive in.
Just yesterday morning, you did address it on Fox that you and the Secretary were going to London because the administration believes in diplomacy. If that's the case, and if this is such a priority, why cancel the trip? Does it mean the talks are not going in the direction the Secretary wants, where you don't think a big breakthrough will happen?
Well, what I also mentioned after the fact in my briefing is that there are logistics. Secretary of State Rubio is one of course, the busiest diplomats in the world. And I think that his travel, his meetings, his discussions up to this point speaks to a complete commitment, not just by the secretary, but by the president himself. This has been a first 100 days where looking for a ceasefire, working for it, traveling the world, speaking to all parties, getting all parties to the table, by the way, which had never happened before. Having these discussions at all occurring is a tremendous accomplishment. It clearly continues. And I think that noticing if one plan changes or if a trip is postponed or called off, it does not speak at all to the nature of the commitment of already what's been accomplished and what continues to be worked on.
All right, let me just follow up with that, because what I said is actually what Zelensky himself said. This wasn't just, reporting that's floating around out there by anonymous sources. Zelensky himself said that he will not accept Russia controlling Crimea, which is part of the U.S. proposal. In 2014, then Senator Rubio, now Secretary of State, said, quote, "It's quite shocking and frankly outrageous how they're getting away with this," talking about Russia's invasion of Crimea. By making Russian control part of the peace deal proposal, is the U.S. letting Russia get away with it?
Let's make something quite clear here. This is not going to be discussed on TV, not between you or me. It's not going to be a discussion over TV or television or dinner or anywhere else. That these are, President Zelensky, I respect a great deal, and he's going to say what he needs to say. But there's a reason why you do want to be able to sit down and talk, and it's why the secretary has been committed to that constantly for the last 100 days. It has been a hallmark of his secretariat up to this point. Getting to peace and ceasefires is a hallmark and a North Star of President Trump's administration, and it's working because it's not a debate on television. It's a discussion between the men and women who have an impact on this and can make decisions. And again, you'll hear these leaders say things independently in op-eds or to television anchors. But what matters is when they sit down, and this has been happening, and it's going to continue to happen. And
How
of course,
long will it
we will
continue,
see, as the secretary has said. Well, that is what Secretary Rubio has already pointed to, and that it will not go on forever. It will not go on for months, but it's a matter of what these individuals, what they know in their private conversations through diplomatic negotiations and conversations and meetings is not something that is fair to discuss on television, speculate about, or muse about. Their success is based on their actions, and it does not come from a conversation like this on television.
Secretary Rubio made the comments himself, and J.D. Vance, that they're willing to walk away, and you have Ukraine saying that it would not agree to a key part of the U.S. proposal. So it is very fair to ask about that and to press about that.
Let me just say, and I've answered you multiple times about the difference between genuine negotiations, which the president has, of course, encouraged, and his vision involves that. Secretary Rubio has, of course, engaged in that, as has the president with Putin of Russia. But for you, I know you want to have a sense of what ratings might be or pulling people in.
No, it's not that. We're just trying to get answers for our viewers. It's not any of that.
They have answers
I want to ask
from
you
the
about something
actions
else,
of the
and that
State
is what's going
Department
on at the
and
State
the White
Department.
House. And we will not have this debate. Certainly, it's not going to be a negotiation between you and me, and you know that. I know that, and the audience should know that this is a dynamic that is very different than this kind of an exchange, which is unfortunate.
Okay, first off, CNN, be thankful that the Trump administration is giving you any time of day. We've known how biased they have been in the past, and now their viewers, for some reason, think that Ukraine is this innocent little country that's being bullied by Russia. Well, they are definitely being bullied by Russia, but they're not just being bullied by one side of the aisle. They've been bullied by the United States. Remember, in 2014, the CIA launched a coup all because they found a whole lot of oil underneath Ukrainian provinces. Again, if you want to look at a similar situation in geography, there's actually a group of Ukrainian people that live out in North Dakota in right around Dickinson. As a matter of fact, it is the town of Dickinson, North Dakota. And what is that area famous for right now? Shale oil fields. So put two and two together. Basically, it is a war for oil rights, a war for mineral rights, and Russia does not want the West taking away something out of their sphere. Ukraine used to be in the Russian sphere. It used to be part of the near abroad. Now it is a Western allied nation, and the rest of Europe is using Ukraine currently as a meat shield against alleged Russian aggression. Europe has been terrified for decades, sorry, not decades, 2 centuries, that whenever Russia finally learns how to mobilize its forces, it was going to sweep across the rest of Northern Europe. Well, that hasn't really happened until, Germany screwed the pooch in World War II in Operation Barbarossa. But we're actually going to be taking things into a more historical and analysis mode here, and this is the stuff I actually really love to do, because on one hand, it's easy to make fun of CNN asking ridiculous questions. Well, Rubio said one thing. Why the change? Okay, the administration's not dumb enough to admit to the change, but I'm going to explain it as best as I can. Ultimately, the peace deal that is on the books right now, the ones that they're trying to work out in a London peace talk, is essentially that Russia gets Crimea. Okay? Russia has had Crimea for the past 10 years, 11 years now, actually, since their tanks rolled through, and it was an illegal invasion. And Russia decided to take Crimea because they knew that if they don't retake the port of Sevastopol, they're not going to have a good presence in the Black Sea. So because of the CIA's meddling, it actually pushed Russia into a position where they could take over the Crimean Peninsula. And so Zelensky thinks he's going to get Crimea back. He thinks he's going to get all the invaded territory back. No, he's not. Okay? Crimea is going to remain in Russian hands. That is a non-starter for any Russian negotiation. They're not giving up Crimea. They're not giving up the port of Sevastopol. All right? It's not happening. And so Ukraine can either live with those terms or continue to be ground down. Zelensky knows that his best bet is to pivot over to the European side, and Europe is not happy with Trump because, Trump's a realist and Europe has never been realist. They've never been realistic ever since, World War I, but that's just Europeans being Europeans. Meanwhile, Ukraine is being used as this giant pawn on a chessboard, and it's used as a meat shield, and that pawn, it's getting whittled down day by day by day by day. This isn't good for the Ukrainian people. This isn't good for the Russian people. The best deal you have on the table is for Russia to keep Crimea and for Ukraine to retake the areas that had been invaded. But Russia keeps Crimea, and the West lifts sanctions. That's the best peace deal they are possibly going to get. Because what normally happens in a European war, you invade a territory, it's rare that you are ever going to have to give it up. Sometimes you do that in different treaties. Sometimes you'll do that in other wars. The Silesian Wars back in the 1700s. Some of the Napoleonic Wars forced things to change hands. But the reality is, if you manage to invade a territory, you're not usually going to lose it. That's kind of the terrible reality of war and negotiating around war. Meanwhile, Zelensky wants to poison the well as much as he can, to skim off the top as much as he can, to get Europe to continue to support this war. And so, this is why these talks broke down. Or at least, Rubio ends up backing out of it. So high-level talks aimed at bringing a pause to the fighting in Ukraine disintegrated earlier, and that was earlier today, might I add, after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff pulled out, dealing a blow to Kyiv's hope for a short-term peace agreement. The reality is, Zelensky thinks that he's going to be able to retake the rest of Ukraine. That's not happening. Okay? There is no world where that's happening. Putin has given too many troops. He is trying to push push the narrative that he's trying to denazify the region, and so if he loses the ground that he's taken, he can at least say that he was successful in his objective. But if he loses Crimea, the Russian Navy is dealt another massive blow. Not that they haven't been already dealt multiple blows. Drone warfare has pretty much decimated traditional naval warfare. The fact of the matter is, now both battleships and destroyer classes are obsolete. That's the sad truth of this situation. So Russia looks like they're not really going to gain much, even if they hold on to Crimea, but they also know that if they don't keep that deep water, warm water port, it's going to be more difficult for them to have economic footholds in the future. And so, after the spat in the White House a couple of months ago, Zelensky has made his position even worse, so no wonder Rubio pulls out last minute. I would too if I were him, because the Ukrainian people deserve peace. They do not deserve Zelensky. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.